World-renowned cave diver Jill Heinerth was about to make history diving into the largest iceberg on Earth in Antarctica. But something went horrifyingly wrong, trapping her inside a frozen grave. This is her true story. Caves form as water sculpts its way through limestone over time. This also happens in ice, even the massive chunks floating in our oceans. But ice caves and limestone caves have key differences, with challenges all their own. Jill Heinerth was about to discover this firsthand. Jill stood at the edge of the frozen sea, her heart racing. Before her lay the hulking iceberg, ancient and alien. She had come to this remote corner of Antarctica with one purpose: to be the first person to ever explore its mysterious caves. Taking a deep breath of the crisp polar air, Jill steeled her nerves. The dive would be perilous, but the siren call of the unknown compelled her forward. She had spent a lifetime preparing for this moment. Ever since she was a little girl growing up in Canada, Jill was fascinated by the hidden wonders that lay just out of sight beneath the waves. Now, at the height of her career as an underwater explorer, she was about to make history. Donning her wetsuit with practiced efficiency, Jill checked and rechecked her gear. Her fellow divers Wes and Paul readied themselves beside her, their excitement palpable. She regarded them fondly. Wes, her trusted mentor, and Paul, her beloved husband. Together, they would brave the iceberg's frozen depths. With a final steadying breath, Jill stepped off the Zodiac and plunged into darkness. The water gripped her in its paralyzing clutch, stealing the air from her lungs. It took every ounce of her hard-won experience not to panic. This was the coldest dive of her career, but she must maintain control. Beside her, Wes and Paul splashed into the Black Sea. She watched them closely, noting how they struggled against the relentless chill. Their suits flooded within moments. Of all the dives in her extensive and impressive career, this one would test them all to their limits, and unbeknownst to her, would lead to disaster. Jill's insatiable curiosity was sparked early. Born in Toronto, Canada, her childhood was filled with exploration and wonder. On Sunday nights, she would watch Jacques Cousteau's underwater documentaries, utterly spellbound. While other girls dreamed of princesses and pop stars, Jill's imagination drifted to the mysteries concealed in the planet's darkest depths. In school, Jill devoured stories of trailblazers from ages past: Marco Polo, Columbus, Armstrong. Their courage to venture into the unknown resonated deeply. She longed to uncover hidden places, full of secrets waiting to be revealed. When the dazzling images of the Apollo missions captivated the world, Jill was utterly enthralled. She begged her parents to let her become an astronaut, but they gently tempered her ambitions. Space travel was not an option for Canadian girls in the 1960s. Undeterred, Jill's questing spirit found inspiration closer to home. She joined the Girl Guides of Canada, where strong female mentors set an example of capability and confidence. They showed Jill that girls could be bold explorers too. Jill studied visual communications at York University, learning skills she knew would help document the wonders she longed to discover. After graduating, she started her own graphic design and advertising firm. The work paid the bills, but her heart wasn't in it. On weekends, Jill escaped the city to dive in Lake Huron's frigid waters. Moving through silent, hidden spaces beneath the waves quenched her thirst for exploration. She longed to immerse herself in undersea adventure full-time. At 26, tired of the 9-to-5 grind, Jill made the leap. Selling her company, she moved to the Cayman Islands to work at a dive lodge. There, 1,000 shimmering dives cemented her calling. She had found her purpose. In this new life beneath the waves, Jill faced fresh challenges. The diving world remained dominated by men, and newcomers were rare. She was often the lone woman on expeditions, expected to prove herself again and again. Male divers patronized her abilities and technical knowledge. Entrenched attitudes constantly obstructed her path. While working toward her cave diving certification, a critical milestone, the sexism nearly derailed her ambitions. Arriving at an advanced technical course, she found the instructors openly incredulous that she qualified to participate. Forced to complete pointless remedial skills just to remain, Jill seethed. Later, as the sole woman at an elite cave diving conference, she keenly felt the awkwardness of breaching this masculine realm. Instructors hit on her, and male divers challenged her right and qualifications to be there. She weathered their skeptical scrutiny with stoic grace. And when Jill sought specialized training from her role model, legendary cave diver Shek Exley, he outright refused her request. He believed cave diving too dangerous for women. In those early days, Jill had to fight not only hazardous caves, but the casual chauvinism of an insular brotherhood. Undaunted, she persevered, and by 2001, Jill Heinerth had cemented herself as one of the world's premier cave divers. But hungry for new frontiers, her ambitions looked to the literal bottom of the world, the mysterious ice caves of Antarctica. With her boundless imagination, Jill wondered, could stable caves exist beneath the massive ice sheets, hidden and unexplored? Hardly anything was known about Antarctica's underwater spaces. Its seas were the coldest and harshest anywhere, enough to kill the unprepared in minutes. Only a handful of daring scientific and military dives had ever been attempted on the continent. Cave diving there was the stuff of fantasy, too extreme for consideration. No one but Jill believed it was possible. Her proposal was flatly rejected by every scientist she asked. Respected polar researchers dismissed the reckless notion out of hand. Even within the dive community, her plans were deemed absurd, verging on suicidal. Caves simply couldn't exist in Antarctica's dynamic, shifting ice. But Jill was undeterred. Her confidence in the idea was unshakable. Antarctic icebergs were not static like the polar ice sheets. Subjected to fierce ocean currents, the massive bergs cracked and rotated like slow-motion roller coasters. If flowing meltwater could sculpt caves through solid limestone over eons, Jill reasoned, surely it could carve hidden pockets inside massive, slowly melting icebergs. It was just a question of finding the right berg. In early 2000, opportunity landed in Jill's lap. The massive B-15 iceberg cleaved off the Ross ice shelf, an expanse of floating ice bigger than Jamaica. It was the largest iceberg in recorded history, and Jill instantly knew it was destiny calling. This was the chance she had been waiting for her whole life. Within the glacial labyrinths of B-15, a frozen world that no human eyes had ever witnessed lurked. If massive caves existed anywhere in Antarctica, she was now convinced B-15 was the place. Yet, with no proof, convincing National Geographic to fund such a risky venture would be nearly impossible. She knew they would need spectacular footage just to stand a chance. Calling on her trusted friend Wes Skiles, the two developed a plan. They would make a bold gamble, personally finance a small reconnaissance mission to the iceberg on faith alone. If their theory proved true, and they captured jaw-dropping images of Antarctica's virgin caves, Nat Geo would have to get on board. Leaving behind all the comforts of civilization, Jill, Wes, and 7 others voyaged to the bottom of the Earth. As their ship neared B-15 after 12 grueling days at sea, Jill beheld the icy massif looming above them. Tears stung her eyes. All the years of dreaming and planning had led to this moment. Somewhere beneath this titanic berg lay the secret world she had staked everything to find. Failure now was not an option. The Zodiac cruised along sheer ice cliffs towering above them like alpine mountains. Jill scanned the smooth facade, looking for any cracks or fissures that might lead down into B-15's hidden depths. If her bold hypothesis was wrong, their expedition would be over before it began. There, Jill spotted a promising crevice cutting deep into the ice. With pounding hearts, they motored into the narrow inlet. As the walls closed in around them, Jill could scarcely breathe. This was it, the moment of truth. If fantastic ice caves awaited discovery here, this would be their entrance. She gave Wes and Paul an encouraging smile, but her stomach was in knots. The bone-chilling water could kill them in minutes if things went wrong, and in this harsh polar realm, the line between life and death was frighteningly thin. But to turn back now would render their long journey meaningless. She tried to silence the uproarious doubts shouting inside her head. They had come too far to retreat. Jill was nervous, not for herself, but for Wes and her husband Paul joining her. Though great divers, it was their first ice dive, the coldest ever. This uncharted iceberg was unknown territory. Instead of tying lines to rock, they would use ice screws. As soon as they entered the water, Wes's suit flooded completely. After a disastrous minute of footage, it took the whole crew to haul him back aboard, and they barely saved his life. Rushing him inside to warm up, it was a grim start. After Wes's close call, Jill and Paul dove again. The sea stabbed her like 1,000 daggers, forcing the air from her lungs in a violent gasp. The icy water crept into her suit with ruthless speed. Down they plunged, the dim light from above fading fast. Then, at 130 feet below the surface, the shaft opened into an alien world. Jill's heart skipped a beat as she swept her light across the hidden seascape. Filter feeders swayed hypnotically in the current. Christmas tree worms clung to the walls like alien jewels. This submerged paradise was teeming with life. Jill spotted a gaping void yawning through the berg's center. Trembling with anticipation, she swam inside. The tunnel continued endlessly into frosty darkness. Then, suddenly, it opened into a massive chamber, its ceilings glimmering with ethereal blue light. Jill's spirit soared. This was it. Antarctica's first ice cave. It was real, and it was magnificent. She wanted to scream her exhilaration into the crystal air and drink in this moment forever, but she resisted, unwilling to disturb this pristine realm. They were the first humans to infiltrate the berg's sanctum, and she was awestruck. Going deeper, suddenly spider lobster isopods rained down on them from cracks overhead. Shaking them off after the uncomfortable encounter, they pressed on into the dark tunnel. The ice groaned and popped eerily against the sea floor. Its dynamism unsettled them, despite its alien beauty. Then, a deep vibration passed through Jill's body. Looking around, all seemed fine. They continued exploring. Only on returning did they see disaster had struck. To Jill's horror, their narrow passage back to the surface had sealed shut, choked with massive shards of fallen ice. Panic bubbled up inside her, but she battled to contain it. The noise earlier was the doorway collapsing. The cave was determined to keep them locked inside its frigid depths, a permanent frozen tomb. Jill scanned the berg's walls in desperation. They had to find a way out. Terror would only spark a cascade of poor decisions. She had to keep her head. Mercifully, she spotted a slim gap between the jagged ice chunks. One by one, they squeezed and kicked through the claustrophobic tunnel. A lifetime later, reaching 20 feet below the surface, Jill saw Wes and crew celebrating above. They later learned an ice chunk had fallen, blocking the cave. Its wave was so mammoth it nearly capsized the crew of the Zodiac. Unsure if the pair survived, all they could do was hope amidst the unfolding tragedy. Ever the professional, Jill remained optimistic about yet another dive that day. They now had more experience with the berg's challenges. It was still uncharted territory, but progress had been made. Plunging down again into the iceberg's embrace, the cave opening seemed stable. Inside, Jill noticed a small current she hadn't felt before. Gradually, it strengthened, then suddenly surged powerfully. She dug her hand into the seafloor to avoid being swept forward, spinning around her anchor point. Meltwater flowing through the berg created the perilous current, growing stronger by the minute. They had to leave immediately before getting sucked deeper inside. But kicking toward the exit, even full power, they barely moved against the flow. Like getting caught in an ocean's riptide, the iceberg once again grasped them, never intending to let them go. Spying faint blue light in the distance, indicating another exit, they gambled with the odds and let the current take them, drifting for what felt like forever. Finally, they emerged to safety. But calamity followed triumph. Surfacing amidst a field of towering shards from a completely different exit point, their boat was nowhere in sight. If not found soon, they would freeze to death in minutes. Treading water, Jill felt like an insignificant speck, fate's plaything. She tried to still her chattering teeth, but hypothermia was descending fast. How much longer could they endure this merciless cold? These neutral buoyancy suits offered scant protection, buying them minutes at most. Marooned here, their fate would be sealed. Then came blessed salvation. Carried on the wind, Wes's distant shouts rang out, followed by the Zodiac's rumbling motor. They were saved. Jill's frozen hands could barely grip the ladder, her limbs too numb to feel anything but relief. Despite yet another close shave with death, they decided on one final dive to maximize their opportunity. Wes, recovered and stable, insisted on capturing the caves with his best camera. But back inside the iceberg, the current's strength again rapidly intensified, nearly trapping them. As Jill led them out, Wes fell behind. When he yelled for help saving his camera, she seethed. The camera didn't matter if they died. After struggling against the ruthless current, they finally made it out, only to face disaster anew. The churning meltwater current now pinned them helplessly to the crevasse floor, 130 feet down. Jill frantically scanned the slick walls for any purchase. Then she remembered tiny fish holes pockmarking the ice. She jammed her frozen fingers inside, using them like climbing holds for an agonizing ascent. Nearly 3 hours later, they emerged, Jill's hand gray and lifeless, but they'd narrowly won their deadly gamble. 2 hours after recovering from that hell, prepared to dive again, one last time. As they planned the next attempt, sudden screams rang from the deck. In horror, they watched their cave world convulse and disintegrate before their eyes. The iceberg the size of Jamaica sank in front of them, buried entirely in its own water grave. Had they still been inside, there would have been no escape. In the end, they were the first and last to ever see inside that mighty iceberg. Though nearly claimed, the alluring yet lethal Antarctic allowed them to pass through unscathed, but only by the thinnest margin. Thankfully, they captured ample footage inside the caves, later crafted into the documentary Ice Island. Jill overcame many obstacles as a woman in diving and is now considered one of the world's finest. Her perilous iceberg dive remains the pinnacle achievement in her storied career. Though an ocean explorer of renown, in reflecting upon her icy brush with death, she's gleaned one enduring lesson. The cold reserves its mercy only for the cautious. There are no second chances given to those who forget this unforgiving truth. In the years since her maiden voyage to B-15, Antarctica continued to summon Jill back. She led National Geographic expeditions to document the infinite marvels hidden beneath the ice. One stunning image lingered in her mind, an alien life form that resembled Venus flytraps, camouflaged in the berg's crystalline walls. What other secrets remained concealed in the frigid abyss? There was a lifetime of wonder yet to uncover. Jill's work shone a light on Antarctica's unseen universe and the threats it faced from climate change. She brought cutting-edge science alive for audiences worldwide through her books, films, and media projects. Young girls wrote her letters, inspired by the bold woman explorer who dove the Earth's extremes. Within the exclusive brotherhood of technical divers, Jill was now revered as a pioneer. She had gone toe-to-toe with the world's most hostile waters and emerged unbroken. Many considered her B-15 expedition the Mount Everest of diving firsts. She happily mentored up-and-coming divers, paying forward the guidance she once sought herself. 2 decades after her breakthrough mission, B-15 remains the only iceberg ever cave-dived. That frozen alien realm she unveiled now exists only in memory and rare archived footage. When later expeditions returned, the berg had vanished back into the frigid deep. But Jill's legacy endured. She proved that with determination and imagination, no realm on Earth remained beyond reach, and her work inspired legions of bold women to push boundaries in their own lives. Jill's path was unorthodox, but she urged girls not to limit their dreams based on societal constraints. Stay resolute and drown out the external voices of doubt, she urged. With passion and perseverance, impossible realms will open when you need them to. The depths are there waiting for those with the courage enough to dive.